Sometimes when something pretty significant takes place in our life experiences, we identify it as a transformation. Skiing is one of the freest expressions of speed and agility, also of strength and of concentration. Every winter, my family would travel down to Park City, Utah, and we would ski at the local ski resorts. And on the day of this event, my brother and I were skiing together, and I bombed it down to the terrain park and hit the second jump that I came to with so much speed that I overshot the landing and had a pretty serious crash. I knocked myself unconscious and I needed to be airlifted off the mountain. The situation was severe and I was in an unconscious state. Actually, I was in a coma, and that was the medical diagnosis of the situation, that there was only one option, and that was surgery. But my parents, being both Christian Scientists, realized that they could rely on God to bring healing to this situation. And my parents simply asked for 1.5 hour to pray with me. The doctors granted that, but they said after that half hour, we're doing this surgery. Well, it wasn't necessary because my parents so clearly understood my identity to be perfect and spiritual that after a half hour's time, when the doctors came in and did a reading on my status, they found that I was stabilizing and I was actually progressing quite purposefully. And so they delayed it another 4 hours. And after 4 hours, the doctors continued to see progress as I was actually beginning to respond. But I was still in a state of unconsciousness. And so my parents needed to deal with this very directly. And all night, they prayed by my bedside. And that next morning, I actually regained consciousness. And my parents were so pleased that I had responded to their prayers, and within just about 20 hours time I had awoken from a coma, and within 2 days after that I was walking around the hospital wing with my dad, singing hymns and praising God and being so grateful for the demonstration of Christian Science. And after 4 days in the hospital, I was on a regularly scheduled flight to come home, and when I was home, the healing really began to take place. When I was in the hospital, the doctors were pretty sure that it would take a few months for me to see a complete recovery. And in Christian Science, we steadfastly rely on God for providing our health care. And my parents had that expectation for healing throughout this entire time. When I got home, I began visiting with a practitioner, and we had regular daily meetings in his office. And all the issues that were presenting themselves still as having brain damage or being paralyzed on the right side of my body or being unable to talk or to eat, all these issues that seemed to burden my experience were being metaphysically addressed at these prayer meetings. After driving home, after one of these meetings with a practitioner, I very distinctly remember looking out across Lake Washington and seeing the Olympic Mountains and seeing this beautiful reflection of light off of the lake. And it was just one of those moments where I caught a glimpse of divine harmony. And I actually, quite literally, sat my seat up and I kind of looked over at my mom and I just said hi. And I had this moment where, I was just spiritually reborn. And that moment brought complete healing to my thought, and it comforted my experience, where I was actually able to go back to school the next day and pick up all 6 classes that I was taking and fit right back into the routine of my daily life beforehand. And my friends, when I arrived back at school, they were shocked. Everyone was looking at me like I was a new man. And my friends began to joke around and say, they began to call me, they began to think that I was like a new individual. But I always, always, always corrected them. And I always made sure that they understood that while I had a change in my character, my individuality as a spiritual idea has never changed. But it was only being realized more fully in my experience. And that was just such a wonderful demonstration, not only for me, but it was also a wonderful demonstration for my family and for everyone that associated with me and that knew me, because they could see a dramatic change in my life experience.